the strain that Trump is putting on his own party with what Republican senators call selfishness. The sound you hear is, of course, Election Day in America. We'll keep following these primaries, and voters in Texas are coming out in the Republican primary. And they are looking down the barrel of what some view as a MAGA civil war, where Donald Trump has picked the anti-Republican reelection side. That's what Senate Republicans even are saying. So kind of an unusual headline if you think about it that way. This is the runoff you might have heard about if you follow the news. You have an embattled incumbent, Republican John Cornyn, and the very controversial, once impeached, scandal-plagued Ken Paxton, who netted a Trump endorsement. And that's got Republican senators and strategists mad. They say it makes it less likely that they'll hold the Senate. Some have called this a brutal primary that leaves Republicans in tatters. Of course, it all depends on whether the eventual nominee can win. But it paves the way for a rising star in the Democratic Party to have what, again, even Republicans say is potentially a better shot at turning this seat blue. Now, if you're watching the news going, I feel like I've heard about this before, it is true. We have heard many times about efforts to turn Texas blue that have not actually won, or as the kids would say, manifested. But why is this time different? Well, Paxton has more than your usual amount of MAGA baggage. He had to settle a federal corruption indictment. He was impeached for alleged fraud and obstruction of justice. His wife filed for divorce amid these allegations, and those are allegations. Of course, a divorce proceeding can go on in court, but it is a matter of public record for voters to be aware of that there are allegations of multiple affairs. I will note that he was acquitted in his impeachment, and he has asserted that he is innocent of all corruption charges. But this is politics, not a court of law. The Republican senators were basically unanimous at wanting the non-impeached, non-scandal-plagued incumbent Republican to be their choice. The candidacy has divided many, including even some couples in Texas.
It's not a great choice, either one, really, but I think I lean towards Paxton for sure. He's local. Cornyn hasn't always been with the Republicans the way I would like, but it was a tough choice. But I did vote for Paxton on the runoff.
What are your thoughts about Paxton?
Crook. Yeah, that's it. Period. He's just a crook.
That's an independent talking.
When the economy is taken into account in the summer, people plan their trips, they think about gas prices, they think about what they can afford, and it's less under Trump. Here was a White House official, though, today.
The thing that I've seen when I look at credit card data and other things that I can get for the private sector is that while people have been spending more money at gas stations, they've been spending more money at everything else, which means that they're still very, very optimistic about the state of the economy.
You can ask yourself whether transferring your planning and your budgeting to your credit card reflects, quote, optimism or just the crunch of the fact that things are more expensive and people go into credit spending to say, all right, well, we'll do the July 4th trip on the card and we'll figure the rest out later. It's more of reality than optimism, and it's a rising price problem that Trump promised and has now failed to fix. 59%, meanwhile, say Trump lacks mental sharpness. Many people skeptical of his health problems. He says he got a clean bill of health after a third in-person doctor visit in just over the year. Skeptics, though, have been raising questions about everything from the appearance of his hands to recent events where he has his eyes closed in meetings, whether you call that a nap or something else, is the eye or the closed eye of the beholder. I want to bring in from the New York Times, Molly Jong-Fast and Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times, also both analysts for us at MS Now. Michelle, we start with Texas, where I want to be objective. If Paxton gets the nomination with Trump's help and ultimately holds the seat, then it may have cost them a little more, but it will feel like noise. If they blow a seat, though, in a red state because Trump just didn't care about holding the Senate, that would really be something.
Yeah, I mean, it would be astonishing. This has been the white whale for Democrats for as long as I've been covering politics, the idea of a Democratic senator from Texas. And I think most people who follow Texas think that Tallarico has a better chance against Paxton because he is so plagued by, scandal, both in terms of kind of bribery and corruption, but also just in terms of this very ugly and messy divorce. At the same time, The amount of the way that these Republican senators are showing so much kind of angst and sense of betrayal over Donald Trump stabbing John Cornyn in the back, it's like, this is the line for you? I mean, to me, that's what's astonishing, is that you see them all say, well, now we're going to stand against the ballroom, right? Now we're going to stand against the slush fund. Now we're going to vote for a war powers resolution, because how dare you take out our friend potentially help take out our friend John Cornyn. And I think it just goes to show how utterly insular they are, right? That this is the line that Trump can cross that will finally make them say, this man is out of control.
Yeah, I mean, your criticism makes a deep point. If you remember in The Dark Knight, where the Joker says, and this is his cynical view, he says people are only as good as they're allowed to be. And whatever the cowardice or narrowness, or you called it insularity, of these Republican senators, apparently they are only as independent as they think they're allowed to be. And having watched a move that in the narrow math of the Senate, they perceive, let's put aside whether it happens, as I said, we don't know. They perceive it as materially making it more likely they lose the Senate. And that, as you say, unloads them to say, well, maybe we will stand up against your ballroom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and what's so bizarre, too, is that it's actually only by kind of standing up against Trump in these very small ways that they might have a chance, I think, or have a better chance of holding the Senate. About
this and doing some research, a nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year pays more than $12,000 a year in taxes. Does that really make sense? If people want me to pay more billions, then let's have that debate. But don't pretend, that's going to solve the problem. You could double the taxes I pay, and it's not going to help that teacher in Queens. I promise you.
Putting aside his defense of his tax record, which is sort of what he's answering the question on, he advocates eliminating the entire federal tax burden of those lower income people. And so my question to you on the politics is, why do you think he views that as popular right now? I mean, that would have been lefty radical 10 years ago.
Well, I'm not sure if he does really advocate for it. I mean, he throws it out in an interview as a way to deflect from the question of whether his own taxes should be raised, right? But if you support the Republican Party, as Jeff Bezos does, you are kind of de facto not supporting lowering taxes.
Agreed. That's what I'm saying. He's with the president, so we know where he is on policy, but there's something that he thinks is popular.
Well, I think that a lot of these, especially in the technology industry, right, they know that artificial intelligence, or at least they suspect that artificial intelligence is going to be terrible for a lot of people's jobs. And they know that there's going to be, sort of metaphorical pitchfork wielding mobs coming for them, right? They're already fantastically unpopular. And so you see them kind of paying lip service to things like, yes, eliminating their tax burden, a universal basic income. They throw all these ideas around, but they never actually then kind of support redistribution when it actually counts.
On night one of the Colbert Report back in the day, I said, anyone can read the news to you. I promise to feel the news at you. And I don't know about you, but I sure have felt it.
Stephen, I'm here on behalf of Paramount. They wanted me to read this statement. Paramount strongly believes in covering both sides of any black hole that is swallowing everything we know and love.
That's what we thought America was, just the land of the free, the greatest democracy. That was what it was.
Yep. That was it. Yeah.
Still is, hopefully.
Thoughts?
I mean, that's what it was. I think that, look, there's no question that this show was taken off the air for political reasons. And I think even in Trump 1, it would have been unthinkable that these kind of TV networks and that these media oligarchs would be, kind of listening to Donald Trump about programming decisions, both because I think maybe they thought that Donald Trump was a transient phenomenon and they would be ashamed to have done that. And now we've seen this mass capitulation, not by the American people, but by these, kind of ostensible elites. It is so shameful. And it's so short-sighted. Unless they really think that they are just going to, that there's going to be some sort of authoritarian consolidation and they're never going to have to answer to an opposition party. If there ever are Democrats back in power, I hope that there will be a lot of hearings about the sort of decisions that these various owners have made to kind of curry favor with this administration.
And Molly?
Sherry Redstone.
You say goodbye.
And I say Sherry Redstone agreed to cancel Colbert so that she could get regulatory approval. It was pretty craven. And, she set a date so she could sell Paramount to the Ellisons and was able to do it. It was pretty transparent, very craven. And also, it's worth realizing that people who watch these shows don't like it, right? We've seen the CBS takeover. Bari Weiss has gone to CBS. She has made some decisions, editorial decisions, and their numbers just, their evening news numbers just keep going down. So we really do see that viewers don't like these kind of ideological decisions being made at news channels that never used to be like that.
And you think they see Colbert end, and then where do they go?
I mean, I think they follow Colbert. We'll see what Colbert does next. But what's replacing Colbert is not something similar. It's a comedy hour.